Hey, everybody. Most people, given the chance, would take the spotlight over a place on the bench, let's say. In sports and business, role players are often overlooked, underestimated, and wondering if it's ever going to be their turn. Well, there's a lot to be learned from the bench, and today's guest, Brandon Bakke, didn't just live that out, he turned it into a blueprint. In his book, Lessons from the Bench, Brandon takes us through his time as a starting high school basketball player to earning a D1 scholarship to Fresno State, only to find his place on the bench and suddenly wondering and asking himself, what does it mean to give everything to a place that no one's really paying attention to? Well, he learned a valuable lesson from that spot on the bench, and what it really means to be a team player. This one is a conversation that applies to athletes, to parents, to coworkers, and understanding that the real win is owning your role, whatever that might be. So let's get to it. It's a good one with Brandon Bakke. Look, let's dive in. I read the book. I loved it. Of course, being from that area, Puyallup.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ties with Brock and people like that. Brock's been on the podcast. And so
Yeah.
I really appreciated that, of course. But the one thing that I really thought about as I read this and being in the business world is how much it applies to business as well as sports, because, I work on a team, and how people treat each other and act, the team is a factor. And it really applies not just to sports, but into business about, being strong in your role. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, Greg, thanks for saying that, because
Yeah.
that was certainly my hope. And if you get into the book, it certainly is coming at you strong from a sports lens. But first and foremost, it's about teams, and we're on all kinds of teams in every capacity in our life. And yeah, that was my hope, certainly, is that it wouldn't take a far leap to draw some of those connections. So I really appreciate you saying that. I think we all have an inherent need to know how we can help our team be successful. At least that's where I think our hearts should be at.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I'm hoping that this could be a source of encouragement, but also tools to help people kind of figure out how they can do that if they're not the star, which most of us are not. And
Yeah.
certainly I was not in my world.
But you've had multiple roles, right? As the athlete, high school and college, as a coach, as a principal, administrator, right?
Yeah.
You do
Yeah.
that now. So your identity as a player, right? You went from a very good high school team in Puyallup to you were good enough to get on the team in college, but you were a backup. You were on the bench. What was your own identity? What was that process like going from,
Sure.
star to backup? Because that's a transition for sure.
Yeah. I was really fortunate, Greg, because I never was the best player on my high school team. And that seems odd for a, recruited full scholarship Division I athlete. Often you are the best player on your high school team. And I saw that a lot with guys who were highly recruited, who had always been the star. Maybe things had come a little bit easier for them. They got to the college ranks and they flamed out like quickly
Mhm.
sometimes. And for me, that was a real gift that I was given, is I was never the best player. Damon Heward was the best player on our Puyallup high school team. He was the leading scorer, got the most attention. I probably was the best basketball player, but he was the star.
Mhm.
And I was accustomed to, having to play a supporting role in some ways. And so that definitely helped me when I transitioned to college, but made it, that was still what, was hard,
Mhm.
because I had visions of myself being the star, scoring the points, hearing your name announced, uh, being in the starting lineup, getting the big interviews with the media. I think that's everybody's dream and
Mhm.
vision for how they'd want it to go down. And then when you start to realize that maybe that's not where your gifting's at, and that was a process that I write about in the book, like my journey to figuring out that I needed to put the team over myself. Once you crack that code, then you really open yourself up to the possibilities of how you can help your team be successful. And sometimes we don't realize that, and sometimes we could need some support in figuring out the way to make that happen.
So before you figured it out,
Mhm.
walk us through what it felt like to not get the nod, to be on the bench. Maybe the team wins, but you're still not
Yeah,
feeling good about things because and I think what I'm talking about is me-ism, right? That's a big theme in the book is me-ism. So describe to us what that is, because I think a lot of us can relate to it if we're
sure.
honest. We feel that way sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, Me-ism is not a new concept that I invented by any means. That's the label I give it, that I kind of identified for myself. That you might have heard it described as me over we.
Mhm.
Uh, the idea that you put your needs ahead of the groups, and when the disease of me, it's another name for it.
Mhm.
And when you are inflicted by it, it really impedes on your ability again to see what you can do to the team for the team. Yeah, and so for me, that was a journey. I get to college. I saw myself as a team guy, and without really realizing that I was like falling into this trap, my behaviors and my attitudes certainly were reeking of selfishness.
Mhm.
And for me, that looked like I describe it pretty specifically in the book, like complaining a lot about my situation, blaming a lot the coaches for, why I'm in this role or not giving the same opportunity, secretly maybe cheering for my teammates to slip up so that I could get another opportunity. Uh, you know, privately behind the coach's back, maybe even with people outside the team, like talking poorly about our operation, our team, all things that really impacted me in a negative way, my relationships. And it wasn't until I was able to overcome that. And that's a challenge in itself. I wish that I had a book, Greg, that told people how to overcome meism,
Mm.
because I think the world is completely inflicted by it.
Yes, more than ever
And
before.
more than ever before. I joke in the book about how YouTube should be called MeTube, because and it just represents what we're all about. It's about our personal brands, putting ourselves out there, making the most of our opportunity in the moment. And not all that's negative, but it sure puts us in a difficult spot to be able to put ourselves above the team. And again, I don't know how to really coach people out of that, other than to have, maybe you're born with it a little bit, that you appreciate. Maybe it's your parents who did a great job of helping you
Mhm.
understand the value of other people in an organization. But for me, it was an awakening. Uh, it was a trainer who confronted me by, it was actually ironically, we were playing the University of Washington,
Mhm.
and it was in Fresno. I went to Fresno State, and so it was on TV locally in Washington. I knew a lot of people were watching. I played a few minutes, scored 5 points, I think, but I certainly, like, I felt embarrassed by the fact that I wasn't contributing more. And after the game, I let people know it. And then it was the following day. No, I was throwing stuff in the locker
Mm.
room that I took, and we won the game,
Mhm.
ironically,
Mhm.
beating UW. And yet I just soaked all the energy out of that room because of how I was acting. And the next day, this athletic trainer, this guy named Ed Ferreira, who, as I say in the book, man, it changed my life. He said to me something like, Brandon, I always thought you were more of a team guy and not so selfish. And it's like, it just hit me because I wanted to be a team guy.
Yeah.
And he put the mirror in front of my face and really was the catalyst in helping me start to understand that I needed to be different. I needed to put the team first, and then I needed to figure out how then I could help. Once I was all about the team, then it was like, how can I help us win?
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest challenge for bench players, role players, whatever you want to call them, is once we do defeat meism, then we want to know how we can help teams succeed. And that's what the book's really about, is like, here's some ideas and how you can help your teams be successful in that supporting role.
So That was a huge turning point, and a lot of times we talk about crossroads, on this podcast, and, like, that is
Yeah.
clearly one for you, right? That you remember so vividly, and we can talk about how that changed your behavior. I think we were touching on it, and I wanna recap. Today as a coach or as an administrator, with NIL and transfer portal, I mean, how do you avoid me-ism today on a team athletically? Because, I mean, we're teaching these kids that it is about you. It is about playing time or go somewhere else. And I would think that's a real challenge for teams to try to
Yeah.
manage that message.
Clearly it is because we're seeing coaches quit at alarming rates,
Mhm.
especially at the college level. Yes, we are set up for a real challenge trying to, create that kind of culture. My advice in the book, I wrote like sort of a different ending, if you will, than I had originally planned because of NIL. Like I started writing this book like 4 years ago, and in the midst of working through it, like the whole landscape changed. And I realized that I kind of needed to just call it out because if I didn't address the elephant in the room, I kind of would come off being a little naive to the current landscape
Mhm.
of what people are dealing with. So I talk about that a little bit. I, I spent time talking with like Scott Drew at Baylor
Mm.
University and Carol Callan, who's been the longtime director of USA women's basketball, like
Mhm.
in these kinds. Ryan Carr, the executive director for the University of Indiana's basketball program, trying to like talk through some of those challenges. And I don't think it's new learning. I think it's being reminded that you have to just be laser focused every single day at creating a culture of we over me. That has to be explicitly taught and practiced. We need to define that culture, celebrate that culture. Uh, it has to be a part of everything we do. And
Mhm.
in the past, maybe you didn't have to like hit it so explicitly, and the other thing is you're like speed dating in a way. You in college, you have 1 year often with
Yeah.
that group to pull that off. And it's not easy. There's so many forces coming at you. I don't know if there is a solution to that problem without changes. And it worries me because so much of the gift of the bench is learning through all of those challenges that you inevitably would face by being in that role for a while. And yeah, we really risk a lot of resilience training, a lot of grit development by what we're facing right now.
Yeah. You mentioned it's really about coaching too at that point. I mean, the coach's job is hard enough, but the
Mhm.
coaches, like you talk about what Scott Drew does to bring in everybody, to get the buy-in. And it's easier said than done, I bet, but it is part of the coach's job for those players on the bench to feel seen, right? I mean, there's plenty of bench players, and you talk about this, that they may feel like nobody sees them, even their own
Yeah,
coach at times, right? But if you got
yeah,
at least there's a start, if there's a buy-in, if there's a program that's getting their involvement and they're being rewarded
yeah,
for that team effort at practice and whatnot,
yeah,
I would think that's definitely a start. And that applies again to business teams too, right? Everybody has a
yeah,
role, but as long as people feel seen and they're contributing, that's where you start to get the value from folks, I think.
yeah. Right on. I think coaches struggle with this. Uh, in fact, every coach that I met with, who all of them exceptionally successful. Coach Drew won a national championship
Yeah.
not too long ago. I was shocked when he said, "Boy, I got to do better at this." Like we're dialoguing just like this, talking
Yeah.
about. I'm actually out in Waco, and I'm sitting at his desk, and we're talking about the bench, and he was sharing kind of what he does, and then he had this moment where he goes, talking through this a little bit, I got to do a better job at empowering the bench, celebrating the bench, helping them explicitly know what each one of them is doing towards our big mission, our big goal. Because if you don't know what you're doing, towards that end target that you're all, rowing in the direction to get to, then you left unfulfilled, not knowing if that you even matter. And, I think as people, we all want to know that we matter.
And you played for legendary coach Jerry Tarkanian, of course,
Yeah.
won at UNLV and then did well at Fresno State. Walk us through that experience because that is a legendary
Yeah.
coach. And did he, was he ahead of his time in doing this, or is this something you learned as part of his program?
Yeah. I had a lot of perceptions of Jerry Tarkanian before he became my coach my senior year. And, I try to paint this picture in the book because it's been a while. It's decades now since
Mhm.
that time in history. And at that moment, there was nobody bigger in basketball than Jerry Tarkanian. As I described, there's only been two times that the lights in Las Vegas have been dimmed. One was for Frank Sinatra, and the other was when Jerry Tarkanian passed away.
Mhm.
Hollywood movies. He had his own caricature, if you will. He was big. And my senior year, he's announced that he's going to be our head coach. He was from Fresno originally. He kind of came back to get back to the community. That was what was in his mind. Helps Fresno State really turn around, the program. And I was going to be a senior. Every single role player that was in the program that was an underclassman all left. They were all encouraged to leave, that he was going to be bringing in elite talent and there probably wasn't going to be a role from them. What saved me is I was a senior. I'd already graduated academically and I had the support of some pretty influential community members that went to coach on my behalf and was like, you need to keep Brandon on the team.
Mhm.
And he saw me, and at the time, I'm sure he didn't maybe know how I could contribute to help, but we met, and he said to me something I'll never forget. He said, my recipe for a successful team, Brandon, is that you need to have like 7 exceptionally talented, freaky good athletic basketball players. And then you need to have about 4 really hardworking, good kids with 3.5 GPAs. Do you have any question about where you might be fitting in on the team right now, Brandon? you know, it, but what surprised me about him was the fact that he could see value in me initially, that I could contribute in like that silly way of helping the team out in an academic way and being reliable, or those like intangible traits. But he was open to trying to see what I was. And in the book, my probably the favorite thing Coach Tarkanian ever told me was one of the best pieces of advice was always look for what players are and not what they're not. And that shocked me when I heard him
Mhm.
say that, because it just wasn't the stereotype I had, put onto him. I thought he was all about the big time guys.
Mhm.
And certainly he loved really good players. But he found a way to just find the abilities, the talents of each player and like put them into the mix. And my favorite story about that in college was I went to him with about 8 games to go. I was like the sixth man for most of my career.
Mhm.
My junior year, I had a handful of starts. When Coach Tart came, I'm on the end of the bench. I'm not seeing the floor at all. I had to like overcome me-ism yet again. I
Mhm.
thought I had conquered it my freshman year. And I learned from that, like, you never get over it. You're always having to fight that. And I go to him with about 8 games to go. And I made a case, something I'd never done before. I made a pitch for more playing time. That was scared out of my mind, Greg. And I role played it out in my mind. Like, I'll say this
Mhm.
and then he'll say this and then I'll counter with that. And so I make the case that, coach, I'm not complaining. I'm really all about the team, but I'm not quite sure how I'm helping us. And I actually think like with the things we're struggling with that I might be able to help us. And so I made my big pitch, and then he looked at me and he said, "You're right. You'll play more. Anything else?" And I'm like,
Short
uh,
discussion.
I wasn't expecting that. Yeah. So I'm like, no, good. And so the very next day we played the University of Wyoming, and first half goes by. I haven't played. Second half, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. There's 20 seconds left to go in the game, and I have not played yet. And coach told me I'd play more, but so
Mhm.
far I hadn't gotten We're up by 2 with 20 seconds to go. Coach calls timeout. I come and he looks in at me down the bench, says, "Go check in." So I'm now on the bench with our ball, 20 seconds to go, and Coach Tark draws up an inbounds play to get me the ball, so I would get fouled.
Oh,
So I would be the one to shoot the free throws. Uh, 39 minutes and 40 seconds of sitting.
yeah.
And sure enough, his play worked. I kind of wished it hadn't. I
Yeah.
was so nervous. I get fouled. I go to the free throw line. I end up making both free throws. After the game, he said, he comes in and he just, "Brandon, you got I'll edit it for the podcast, the biggest guts
Yeah.
of anybody I've ever coached." And I just remember thinking, like, he stuck to his word. He gave me 20 seconds. I hadn't been getting anything.
Yeah.
And in that moment, he gave me that opportunity. And that's one of the lessons from the bench, if you will, is that every second is an opportunity. And I was just very grateful that in that moment, I made the most of it. And that led to a few more then with coaching. Before you knew it, I ended up being the sixth man again and getting some opportunities on the court that, that he was able to see that we can grow and improve and get better. And so I have nothing but love for Coach Tarkanian. He taught me so much.
What do you think it was that you said some people came to bat for you, community members or maybe school people?
Yeah.
What was it about you? What had you done, that resonated with them? Because
hmm
that's impactful. Somebody went to bat for you for a reason.
Yeah. Greg, one of the lessons from the bench that I talk about, again, like my advice on how to navigate this role and help teams succeed, is that you need to play with purpose. If your identity is in how many points you get and minutes played and all those things, those extrinsic rewards, what happens when that doesn't happen? What happens if you're doing this to have fun? I hear this all the time from parents and students that I work with. It's not fun, and so they quit.
Hmm.
Well, often athletics isn't fun, and what happens when it's not? And my father really ingrained in me that I needed to have a bigger purpose for playing this game, a purpose that transcends those extrinsic rewards. And we zeroed in. I say we because he really helped cultivate this mindset in with me that I was playing to help other people, to encourage other people on the team, but also in the community and in the athletic department. And so I really embraced that. I needed, again, during those rough years, those first couple years where I wasn't playing a lot, I needed to find another way to contribute with meaning. And that purpose helped guide that. It was like my compass. And so I spent a lot of time speaking in schools and working in the community,
Hmm.
volunteering in different aspects, but really trying to use the platform that I had. And in Fresno in the early 90s, it was 10,000 a game, autographs in the mall, even as a relative nobody.
Hmm.
It was a big deal. And I just really wanted to use that platform to help others. And I think the community like really embraced that and appreciated that. And I think that had a lot to do with it. Like maybe it was just, hey, Brandon's given a lot. Let's give back to him in this small way. Uh, yeah, I hope that's the reason at least.
Yeah. Well, you obviously it's a lot about the basketball perspective of this, but you also give some really good examples through football of what being a role player is about. And
Yeah.
ironically, it's a Puyallup guy and Damon Heward that you mentioned before, who had a long NFL
Yeah.
career. Could you talk about what you learned by digging deep into his career and some of the accolades that
Yeah.
he received? Because I think it's a great example that shines as to how to do it the right way.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that, Greg. The book is kind of like part my story, but then it's really a collection of stories of the people that I've been just blessed to spend time with,
Mhm.
whether they were college roommates to like people I coached with or against, or who I just happened to be in a relationship. And a number of them, just strangely enough, about my life gone on to play in the NFL or the NBA or like just those different incredible opportunities that most
Uh-huh.
humans don't get. Damon Heward was my teammate my senior year at Puyallup High School. I moved there, didn't know anybody, and Damon took me under his wing. We got really close that year as we both were preparing for our respective college careers. And in his case, a pro career is the top quarterback in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing after a really good college career is he went undrafted. And he ended up he got cut his first year, wasn't even in football, ends up getting an opportunity with Miami. He found a way. Dan Marino actually saw value in what Damon brought to the quarterback room and the chemistry that he helped, cultivate. And so Dan Marino advocated for Damon Huer to get a shot. And that led to I think 14 year NFL career that started with Dan Marino believing in Damon Huer, who was going to be his backup. Damon, one of I think bench players, especially even those that are like 12th man on the team, never playing, can help teams win. It's not charity case. It's like, you can help us win. And Damon is kind of the tried and true model of how you can do that. And that's like in practice. Damon became so good at mimicking other quarterbacks and learning the other team's system and what they were going to be doing, that he like made a career out of that. And famously in the book, they were getting ready to play in the AFC Championship game against the Colts. Ironically, his brother Brock is the backup for the Colts.
Right.
Was kind of interesting, backing up, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. And so they're in the championship game. They're getting ready to play Manning and the Colts. And Damon apparently just had this unbelievable week mimicking Manning. And in the game, they win the game, and they're going to go to the Super Bowl. And and Coach Belichick, arguably the greatest football coach ever, is giving out the game ball to the player that made the biggest impact. And he throws everybody a curveball and gives Damon Huer the game ball for how his preparation for the team he felt was the turning point for them. Damon didn't play a second.
Yeah.
And Belichick still talks about that and Damon's ability to impact the game from his role. And interesting about that is Damon, again, top quarterback and recruit in the nation, getting humbled so significantly, so vulnerable to being, to me-ism, and yet he used that challenge, that adversity at that crossroad in his life to really springboard him into something truly special. And what a great example for me in particular, but so many other people, which is what I was hoping to shed more light on.
Yeah, that's such a great story. I loved it. And I love you sharing it. And when you think about how many people on that Patriots team that he impacted, so you think about what he's being rewarded for was the defense. He helped the defense out, right? By acting as Peyton Manning during practice so well.
Yeah.
He helped the defense prepare. But then during the game and all week, he's in the quarterback room. He's helping Tom Brady, or he's on the bench. Like the classic shot. You see the guys on the bench, they're looking at the iPad, and you can see the backup talking to the starter because he's trying to help out. And so think about how many people on that team he really impacted. And that's really what Belichick was recognizing.
And I really love that the last chapter in the book I call Celebrate the Bench. And I use that, what you just said, as kind of one of the culminating moments at the end of the book, that Bill Belichick took time to celebrate the bench publicly. We don't get the big applause, bench guys, from the crowd. But, we need the coaches and our teammates to do that. We need to be seen.
Yeah.
And Belichick, in that big pivotal moment, shed the spotlight on a backup. And that also does such a great job of empowering everybody else in the room to go, hey, we all value. I didn't talk about it in the book because it's so new, but I think Mike McDonald with the Seahawks, the head coach, does a great job with that as well. He talks about the ready squad. In NFL football, they have the 52-man roster, and then they have a practice squad. Most teams, it's the practice squad. They're like they're not really a part of the team, but they're on the team. And McDonald has a whole different way of communicating that. He doesn't call it the practice squad. He calls it the ready squad. And they are always so excited when one of those guys gets in. They talk about the 70-man roster, not the 52-man roster. And it just it just brings so much value to everybody. I can't wait to meet him at some point
Yeah.
to be able to just he's so inspiring and really affirmed some of the things that I was talking about in my book.
Yeah, he would love your book, and I'm sure you have a lot of connections. Like I mean, you cross paths with so many people, and actually, one of them is again a couple of former Seahawks. One in Trent Dilfer, right, Fresno
Mhm,
guy, and
mhm,
that's
mhm.
another example. Like, so here's a guy that wins the Super Bowl, and you can tell the rest of the story, but basically loses his job and then goes back and forth whether he's a starter or not, and really had to make a choice on whether he's gonna be a team guy or not
Yeah,
with Matt Hasselbeck, and it
mhm,
and it all worked out. But walk us through that because that's another great
yeah.
example.
Yeah, Trent and I went to college together, and we got really close in college. One of my, great friends from in my entire life, and Trent, had a up and down journey in Tampa where he was drafted, put in a really tough situation. Often with quarterbacks, where you go and the environment you're put into really ends up making your career or breaking it. And he was in a tough spot. Yeah, he made a Pro Bowl, found a way to help his team really improve, but then he got cut. He got shipped out basically. So he goes to the Ravens to be, for the first time in his life, really a backup quarterback. And in the midst of, you know, that role, ends up getting put into the starting lineup, takes them and they win a Super Bowl behind an exceptional historic defense.
Mhm.
I don't think the Ravens really, maybe collectively, they thought they could do better at quarterback. And so they cut him. He's the only quarterback to ever be cut after winning a Super Bowl. And he goes to the Seahawks to be a backup. So talk about like a tough situation. I was selfishly excited because he's coming home where I live and I was
Mhm.
going to get to spend time with him. But him and Matt Hasselbeck both came at the same time. Trent to be his backup. Matt's the young upstart. They were competing, and at first it was pretty rough. I think it was a little dysfunctional. Even not. I think Matt would say that he was very leery of Trent with all the things that he had accomplished, and Trent would tell me privately just how much he wanted to support Matt. But he was competitive. They both were
Mhm.
competing for that same job, but Trent's mindset was I wanted to compete with Matt, not against Matt. And through the course of their back and forth, like, Trent was named the starter and then Matt was named the starter and this back and forth. Trent really just stayed steady in his approach. And, Matt ended up really realizing that Trent really was there to help them be the best quarterback room they could be. And that Trent was truly with him. And in the book, the journey of them, the chapter is really about relationships and
Mhm.
about how bench players can really help a team win at relationships, which I think is maybe the greatest way a team can succeed is if we've cultivated deep and lasting relationships. And, sadly, Trent's son, Trevin, passed away when he was 5 while they were on the Seahawks together. And I got to witness firsthand just how devastating that was and
Mhm.
how Matt turned it around on Trent to serve him and give to him and like carry him through that really tough moment. Two guys that had gone through this whole journey together, but somehow had cultivated this incredibly strong relationship that is, they're still as tight as can be. That's just it forged from those moments together.
Yeah.
Really special.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another great story in that, and I remember that time. I was covering the Seahawks as a reporter
Mm,
during that time, and I
mhm.
remember the back and forth, and the fans were on one side and then the other, and the
Yeah,
team was kind of
yeah,
500. So, but that friendship is really strong, and it's really interesting how they helped each other along the way, and that's the key there. Okay, so I'm a bench player. All right. I recognize that. I want to help the team. I want to
mhm,
have good relationships. What can I do? I mean, it's about owning your role, right? So I'm
yeah, yeah,
embracing my role. Is that effort through practice? And what can I do?
yeah. Well, you used a key word there, I think, which is embrace your role. Once
Mm,
you've defeated meism, then I think you've opened yourself up again. I said this earlier. Open yourself up to this opportunity where you can help the team win. And the next step, in my opinion, is to embrace the role. And that's different than what we're usually told, which is to accept the role. Accept the role is kind of like, fine, this is where I sit. Uh, Embrace the role is like, this is where I start and how can I help us win? And when you embrace that, then and there's ways to do that. I think staying hungry in your role is a way you can embrace it. Taking pride, and what I mean by that is like you're not conceding that you're just stuck
Hmm.
in this meaningless, position. That you're still hungry to be the best player you can be. Another way to embrace your role is to like realize that you can improve and your individual improvement, whether you're in a business context, a school context, any team, if you work to keep developing yourself and improve yourself and your role and your skill set, you're going to help the whole team get better. And that also leads to more opportunity. So those are a couple ways. I think I talked about helping like impact the game. Think we all have these intangibles that we're gifted with in our lives and trying to spot what yours are and then how it can like translate into wins in the business context into whether it's the bottom line with more money or just like the culture of your organization, how you can in your with your giftings that you have, how you can lean into helping people and helping that team find success is a real key. Sometimes you're not sure about that. Sometimes you need to work with your manager, your coach, the leader to help identify what those things might be. I think another thing, as I mentioned, I draw at least I've touched on a little bit, is to be a culture builder.
Hmm.
In any organization, we talk a lot about culture.
Hmm.
Culture, I really I've come to learn that culture is really our behaviors in one word. Culture is behavior. Uh, Climate, we hear a lot about. Climate is how we feel. uh, we can all be culture builders with our behaviors that help people feel like they want to be there. And so, as bench players, I think we have incredible power to be culture builders, to impact the behaviors of other people. I talked in the book about one of the best culture builders I've been around, a guy named Chris Egan, who was,
Hmm.
in the media with you back in the day in
Hmm.
Seattle, and a guy who impacted our behavior, how his effort, his attitude, his energy giving to the team impacted not only how we acted, but then how we felt about being there. And that he was a bench guy to begin. He ended up, working his way into even a starting role at one point during our time together in high school. But it taught me a lot just about how, and culture is all people tend to talk about. As bench players, sometimes we can be the biggest impacts of that of anybody.
Yeah, that's a great. Those are great examples. What I think about too, and I made this note when I was reading the book. It's also what you don't do. What I mean by that is like negative talk. So you think
Yeah,
about teams and culture and how negative talk can just chip away at that foundation, right? Almost like a cancer that can permeate through a team.
yeah.
So maintaining that what you say and how you say it seems to be a big opportunity for people too.
Yeah, I learned. I have a friend of mine. His name's Trevor Moad, who passed away not too long
Mhm,
ago. He is most famously known as Russell Wilson's mental coach. He
mhm,
wrote a book called Neutral Thinking, and um, I write about Trevor to really put a spotlight back on his great work of neutral thinking, which is exactly what you were just alluding to. Like part of mentally being able to navigate challenge is how we process it mentally and then verbally. And he says, like one of my favorite quotes from him, and again, I'll edit this for the podcast, but he says, don't say stupid stuff out loud. It just destroys teams. But what he also talks about is like mentally, like we do face negativity. And it's how we process that negativity, not getting too high, not getting
mm,
too low, not verbalizing the negativity that can help us really manage those negative thoughts to become what he calls neutral thoughts. And I think that's really important when you're going through hard stuff on a team context to not say it out loud. Don't verbalize the negative. Process it, work through it, find
mhm.
a way, somebody to talk through it with them to help you be able to do that. But when you start to verbalize the negative, it becomes toxic, it destroys teams. Not only are you not helping your team as a bench player, you're actually hurting the team. And you're not going to be on the team very long if you're a bench player and you're hurting the team. So it's not just a coping mechanism; it's a survival mode.
Yeah, good
If
point.
you're a bench guy,
Yeah.
yeah,
So you went on to coach high school basketball and at the college level. I mean, right
mhm,
away, right out of school, right? Or as you were
yeah,
leaving
yeah,
school. How did this mentality translate for you as a coach?
mhm,
Did you think about the guys on the bench? I mean, clearly I'm sure
yeah,
you did. And how did that
yeah,
affect you as a coach and then later as an administrator working with kids?
yeah. The bench is a gift, as I say to people.
Mhm.
If you think about it, I'm going to segue just to transition a little bit to this, but and then I'll get back to your question. In life, life's about adversity. Anybody who's lived past high school will tell you life is about challenges and struggles and mountains to climb. And if you haven't learned how to cope with that and navigate that, I tell parents all the time, we got to teach our kids how to climb the mountain. Don't remove the mountain.
Mhm.
And so many times in life, that adversity is like life and death. It's divorces. It's like super hard evictions and homelessness, like
Mhm.
really difficult things. You losing your job. Where in life can you practice dealing with adversity in like a sandbox where you can like mess up and like keep going and it's okay. It's not the end of the world. And that's athletics to me. And unfortunately, I think some people make it like life and death,
Mhm.
and it doesn't need to be. And it's a gift helping train us for those challenges. And now back to your question, when I went into the coaching world at a very young age, I'd coach at Clovis High School in California at the time, one of the largest high schools in California. I was 22, scared out of my
Wow.
mind. Yes, I felt that getting I felt like I was ready to really empower everybody. And my mind definitely, I do think I was better prepared for cultivating the bench ecosystem and making them feel valued because I had been in their shoes, certainly. That said, where my struggle came was not understanding how come you can't figure it out like I did.
Mhm.
It just hit me again, across the face that I can't, I have to work at it. I can't just like believe in it and model it. And I have to like explicitly be teaching it over and over again and helping them. I had to walk my talk, honestly. Every year it starts over again. It never stops.
Yeah. And you touched on parents there, which I definitely wanted
Hmm.
to ask you about because, as parents, we want our kids to play. I mean, let's just face it. I mean, we all think
For
about,
sure.
right? We want our kids to play. We want them in the game. And you, as a coach, I'm sure you dealt with parents that maybe didn't have the right perspective when it comes to that. But what can parents get from this conversation to help them help their kid to
Yeah.
be in the right role, to own the role that they're in?
Yeah. You know, I think that's the whole point of the book, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. Like all of these different lessons from the bench are really pointed at like you have value and you can help us be good and you can help your team succeed. I think what started this whole journey for me, honestly, was I was a principal out of high school, and I'm meeting with a family, and they're very frustrated with their student, their child not getting the playing time that they thought he deserved and they wanted to see. And they said something like, "What's the even point of this? Like, there's no point if he's not out there." And I just remember thinking, like, "So are you telling me that my whole career, like my college career, was pointless?"
Right.
Like, that I had no meaning? I realized at that point, like, I needed to try to do something to help. Um, for parents, I would circle back to the challenge I threw out, the metaphor about helping your kid climb the mountain, not remove the mountain. That's the first thing is try to find that perspective that this is an opportunity for your child to grow and be prepared for life, that's coming. The second thing is their kid is not flawed uh, for not being the star.
Mhm.
And I think accidentally sometimes we can send that message when we're blaming other people for the situation, and the coach often gets the brunt of that. And sometimes the coach is wrong, frankly. Sometimes the player should be playing more, and
Uh-huh.
I get that.
Uh-huh.
But nobody, as I write about in the book, and one of Coach Tarkanian's other, pieces of advice to me is nobody cares more than the head coach. Like they're trying to do what they think is best, and they might not get it right all the time. But when we are constantly, pointing the finger at other people to blame, then we kind of send a message to the student that there's something wrong with them, that they're not good, that they're, a second class citizen, if you will. And so it really takes that team effort. Parents, I really do think have the biggest key in the early years of helping them, learn to give energy to their teammates, support the team, look for your opportunities, be ready when it comes, keep competing to be the best that you can be to help the team. It's about we,
Uh-huh.
my son's Britain. It's about all of the team,
Uh-huh.
and that's where it begins, and then that ends up permeating out for the rest of their life, in my opinion. But it's not easy. If it was, everybody would do it. It is
Yeah,
hard,
it
which
is.
is why I think we all need encouragement and be reminded back to that.
Yeah. So when you reflect on your career, what do you think you got from being a bench player that you didn't get had you been a starter?
Mm, that's a really good question, Greg. Uh, well, I'll tell you, I think it helped me be a better parent.
Hmm.
Uh, as I Parenting is really hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my
Mhm.
life, and part of that's because you see them struggle with adversity.
Mhm.
I think that, I talked already about the gift of the bench. I
Mhm.
think me being comfortable, not being the star and having challenges to overcome and seeing the value that I could play and no matter what role, I think has really helped me with my kids as they've navigated life's challenges. And I have adult children now, but seeing them, struggle and life and in high school and on teams in all contexts. I'm hoping that I've helped them develop the grit that it takes to land on their 2 feet. Uh, I'm by no means a perfect parent, by far from it,
Mhm.
but that's certainly where my heart was at. I think
Mhm.
that was a gift. I think you get humbled when you're on the bench, Greg.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
humbling,
Yeah.
and I think humility is a really important aspect of being on a team. I want to hire humble people. As a principal, I
Yeah.
look for humility,
Yeah.
and as one of the big three traits I look for. And I think you know it's kind of an unwanted gift, but being humbled can really pay major dividends as you move forward in your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about building character, really, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's what it was doing for you. That's what it does. And it doesn't mean a starter can't have character, right? But for you, for that role, I mean, look at what it's led to is you writing this book. So it's really it built a lot of character in you at a time where we're still figuring out who we are, right? So
yeah,
I think that's a big
mm,
part of that.
yeah, for sure. And I would also say this, that, and this goes for anybody on a team, but uh, being on the bench, I think, helped me just be a little more, well, I'll say not being on the bench, embracing the bench role
Hmm.
to try to make the most of that opportunity. I think really helped me leverage like develop strong relationships. I think I've taken it for granted that I have in my arsenal now, as 35 years removed from competitive athletics, that I still am tight with so many people that I played with and competed with and coached with. And that's really what it's all about. Like that is what playing a sport
Hmm.
should be all
Hmm.
about, is cultivating, very few places in our life do we get to form those kinds of deep relationships that can get forged through battle, through a mutual challenge that we're facing together. And I'm just so thankful to look back and still see all these names of people that I talk to love and communicate, people I've coached. It's a real blessing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that kind of gets lost in the shuffle is, I coach cross country and that's individual sport, but it's very team oriented. I mean, those kids support each other. It's so great
Mm.
to see. And I think about
Yeah,
my own high school athletic career. I didn't play in college. I wasn't good enough to play any of the sports that I played in college, but I have such fond memories of those teams that I played on. I
mm,
mean, so I mean that you take that with you the rest
yeah,
of your life, and you're teaching that now. And I wonder about like this book. What you kind of sparked what led to it, that conversation with the
yeah,
family. But writing a book is no easy task. So you said, I think you said 4 years. Like, walk us through
yeah,
that because that
yeah,
is a commitment to not only think about it, but to
yeah,
to get it done.
yeah. Yeah, I wrote a book, during the pandemic, something I'd wanted to do, about my grandfather
Hmm.
during World War II, and, I wanted to tell the story that no one in our family really knew about, and so I had to kinda dig and learn a lot, and I ended up, like, pumping out a book,
Mhm.
and so I kinda learned but I kinda wrote it for my family, you know? It got I've learned there's other people that have appreciated it, but really it was for my mom, it was about
Mm.
her dad, it was a gift I wanted to give to her. And it got my mind going, like, I wonder what I could give back, like, that maybe would be for more people, and so I kinda marinated on that, and then, sparked by that parent meeting that I shared with you, the journey began. And, yeah, from there, it was just about patience and failure and vulnerability, and you have moments, and at least for me, where I cranked out about 40% of the book in 3 months in 2021,
Mhm.
and then I didn't write again for 2 years because I
Wow.
changed jobs, and then I'm going back because 'cause I'm learning more and rewriting, and, I had a really great writing partner, TJ Cotterill, who was a writer for the Tacoma News Tribune and
Mhm.
now a teacher as well, and, he was having a partner to kinda, um, be vulnerable with, who you can we talked about adversity and failure, that's writing, and then you kinda just put it out to the world, and it is, like, the most vulnerable feeling to put something like that out and knowing that it's not perfect, and you already immediately you wish you would have done something different. Eventually, you just have to say, "Okay, it's done."
Yeah.
But it's been really encouraging. Along the way, I sent it to about 50 different rereaders to give coaches and athletes to get their feedback. Some current NFL players that are on the bench themselves, and
Mm.
just like, is this resonating with you? And I got such encouragement along the way that we were onto something, that really kept me going, that needed encouragement. And the reception so far has just been really humbling and appreciated. And I just hope I can help people. That's really what it's all about, Greg.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's great. I mean, I cruised through it and enjoyed it. Whether you know the Puyallup clan or not, which I've recognized a lot of those names, which was great. There's great stories. So is there anything in there, are there any lessons you think that we didn't touch on that people can get from this message? Or what's the one, takeaway that both
Yeah.
parents and athletes can take from this?
Yeah. I think I would circle back to something I touched on a little bit earlier, but that idea of purpose. I think if you can zero in as a parent, as a player, as to what your purpose is for doing this thing. And it can't be to have fun. And unfortunately, I think that is what most people might say is their purpose for being on a team, is to have
Mhm,
fun.
mhm,
Because what happens when it's not fun anymore? And so much of training and failing and athletics is not fun. So when that's stripped away, we gotta have something more that we are aspiring to, that is grounds us in why we're doing the thing. And I just would circle back to that, maybe as the final moment here with together, is find your purpose.
mhm,
Make sure it's something that is endearing, that's not extrinsic motivation, and then circle that, keep that in your forefront, and let that be your compass to help you navigate the ups and downs that's going to come on being a part of any group of humans trying to do something together.
Yeah, well said. It applies to athletes, to parents, to coworkers, right? I mean, there's a lot of lessons in there. So,
Yeah.
lessons from the bench. Let us know where people can get it if people want to check you out. I don't
Uh,
know if you're a
yeah.
social media guy or not. I didn't check that, but I know where to get the book.
Yeah.
But let people know.
So, working in a high school, Greg,
Yeah, yeah.
to be very honest, I have tried to avoid social
I
media
bet
like the plague.
that's probably not
So
a bad
I
idea.
am coming out of my shell and recognizing it's a part of getting the message out. So yeah, you can follow the book on Facebook or on Instagram and my journey, with this. Be humbled to get people to hop on board the lift off.
Yeah,
But it all lessonsfromthebench.org is the website to learn more about the book. There's other resources there that people can learn more, about the book and can support your team that you might be on. There's also, on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any bookseller, you can find the book. And hope I can meet some of your listeners in person someday to talk more about it.
yeah. Well, thanks for being here. There's, the message of this podcast is the struggle before success, and
Mm,
that's a phrase we use a lot. And that's really what this is about, is embracing the struggle as part of the success, I think. So
mhm,
thanks for
mhm,
being here, Brandon. Thanks for writing the book and taking the time to share your story. It's good stuff.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for the opportunity.
You bet.